The TSA may soon reject driver's license as identification from major states in the U.S. because they don't pass the Real ID law. Now, the Real ID law, or the Real ID Act, passed back in 2008. However, there have been a number of delays in actually enforcing it. And now, beginning in the new year, TSA agents and governmental officials claim that they're going to start implementing it, and they're going to start rejecting driver's licenses from very specific states. And I'll tell you which states they are in just a second. But here's more about the law. The Real ID law requires states to implement certain security features before they issue IDs, and also verify the legal residency of anyone to whom they issue an ID card. So, from personal experience, if you're from California, you go to the DMV, you fill out a form indicating where your address is, and then boom, they send you a driver's license. Well, apparently that's not good enough for the government. They want to ensure that there's some verification that that address is real. The Real ID also requires states to share their databases of driver information with other states. The information sharing provisions are a big reason why some privacy groups oppose the law, saying it would effectively be the equivalent of a national identification card.
I'm probably missing something, but I actually don't mind a national identification card.
I don't either. I'm trying to figure out why that's such a terrible thing. I don't think that it is, to be honest.
So I don't want people to get me wrong. There are things that are tangential to that I massively oppose. So I hate it when Arizona says, okay, you're Latino, I want to see your papers. White people, you don't have to carry papers around. And honestly, in Arizona, if you're black, you don't have to carry papers around, or you're Asian. But if you're Latino, well, I'm going to need your papers. So I'm opposed to that. I'm opposed to saying, okay, you need to have some sort of driver's license or ID in order to vote, because that's the way, it's almost a poll tax, because that costs money to get, and a lot of people in the cities don't have them, elderly people don't have them, students don't have them. You'd be surprised at how many people don't have them. 25% of African Americans don't have a driver's license. So I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about a card that says who you are, and it applies across the country.
I mean, we kind of already have that. They're called passports.
Or Social Security cards.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit more specific, and I don't want the government spying in on us at all, but they do have to know that you're Anna Kasparian and I'm Cenk Uygur,
yeah.
Right? And so if we have a driver's license, that's a reasonable regulation to have. And if the driver's licenses sync up across the country, I don't see that as necessarily a bad thing if you leave it at that.
Now, let me tell you what the negative impacts of this act include. So they want all of these states to make all these changes when it comes to identification. And the verification process when it comes to addresses is something that's going to cost money. And so they passed this act without allocating any funds for it. So no one's going to get any money for it. The taxpayers in these individual states are likely to end up having to pay for it. Now, any restrictions on air travel won't go into place without at least 120 days notice, and no state has received such a notice yet. In several states, however, restrictions on entering federal buildings could kick in as early as January 10th. The states facing a January expiration are Alaska, California, Illinois, Missouri, New Jersey, New Mexico, South Carolina, and Washington, Puerto Rico, Guam, and U.S. Virgin Islands. They all face the same deadline.
So now that brings up two different issues. One is unfunded mandates. And a lot of people complain about this. Republicans tend to complain about it a little bit more. But there's validity to that. If the federal government, you want to basically pass a regulation, okay, well then pay for it. And so it's another thing to say, yeah, California, New Mexico, you pay for it, right? We pass a regulation, you pay the bill. So yeah, that's a little problematic. Secondly, I don't like this federal go-around. Mm-hmm. So for example, when they wanted to raise the drinking age to 21, they couldn't do that nationally. So instead, they said to all the states, you won't get any highway funding, that's it. I mean, that's a huge chunk of money unless you raise your age to 21.
Yep.
So it was a roundabout way of doing a national law. If you're going to do it, do it. Don't do this trick where, you say, I'm going to deny you the X, Y, and Z if you don't do it. So I don't love that. In the end, I agree with the policy. I'm not sure I love the way they did it.
Yeah, I don't love the way they did it either, especially because I don't know what it means for people from the states that don't have the valid IDs according to the government. Does that mean that we have to go back to the DMV and go through this long, laborious process of getting a new ID. I mean, it's a pain in the ass already without the verification. Now, huge amounts of people have to go back to the DMV and get this done. It's going to be a disaster.
Well, I'm sure, though, that going back to the DMV is going to be no problem at all. For people who are pro-government regulation, which we are, that doesn't mean we're in favor of every regulation. It means we generally believe that society should have rules. The DMV doesn't often help us make our case.
No, the DMV is disastrous. Disastrous.
But to be fair, I thought the one in California was actually much better than the one in New Jersey.
Really?
So imagine New Jersey.
Last time I went to the DMV, I was there for 4 hours for an ID.
Yeah, you got off light.
I did get off light because I made an appointment.